In this video, we're going to continue with the project of adding the dialog boxes. So before I do that, I'm going to insert Big Bird, which is who she'll be having a dialogue with. So I'm just going to insert a sprite. I'm going to load a downloaded image. Okay, and you can see that the background is white instead of clear. So I'm going to make sure that the first color up here is clear, and then I will click on the fill button and just click all over the white spaces. If you want to get in between the legs there, you could even do that just by zooming in. I'm not going to be that picky right now because I just want this to be about the dialog box. So I'm going to X out of that, make him a little bit bigger, maybe make her a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'll place him here. I'm also going to make him a solid because right now she can just walk through him. So I'm going to add a behavior and then double click on solid and then just X out of that. Okay. Another thing that I did is I changed the size. So instead of 1200 by 1200, I changed it to 1800 by 1200 just to have a longer platform here. So just change that number if you're still at 1200 by 1200, and then also under project properties, go to view, and just make sure that this is also 1800 by 1200. All right, so next what we're going to do is start on our dialog boxes. So the first thing we're going to do is add a tiled background. You can just click anywhere. And it doesn't matter what color you choose. This is eventually going to be transparent. So just click on the rectangle icon, crop it, and then insert it. All right, and then we're just going to make this longer, and then we're going to go to opacity and make this 50, just to remind us that this is going to eventually become invisible, but I still want to be able to see it in the game. So what we're going to try to do is when the girl walks to this space and enters this space, a dialog box will come up. And every time she enters a space that has this dialog trigger, then a different set of text will come up to continue the dialogue. So that's essentially our goal right now. So as soon as I have this here, I'm going to go to my project panel, and instead of tiled background, I'm going to right click on this and rename it as dialog trigger, because again, when she moves through this space, it's going to trigger the dialog to pop up. Okay, next I'm going to add an instance variable, so make sure that this is still selected, and go to instance variables. Okay, and then we're going to name this dialog text. And this is going to be string. And then for the initial value, this is basically what you want the text to be the first time she goes through it. So I'm just going to write and then OK. All right, so next I'm going to copy this trigger. Again, make sure it's highlighted. You can either right click and do copy or try Control C. And then going to, again, right click to paste. And then I want the second trigger to be here when she's closer to Big Bird. So make sure that you are clicked on the second trigger here and then go to the dialog text. Now, instead of the text from the first one, we're going to insert the text for the second trigger. So whatever you want the text to be for the second one. And I'll have Big Bird respond. Okay, and then I can even create a third one. So I'm just right clicking to copy and paste, and then I'll place this kind of at the end. All right, and then we'll change the text again for this third one. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our project panel and add a second layout. So I'm going to right click on the layouts folder and add layout only. And I am going to name this layout Dialog. And then while I am in the dialog layout, I'm going to come down here where it says layer 0 and just double click that to rename it to dialog as well. So please make sure that everything is identical between the layout name as well as the layer name, because this is eventually going to be invisible and we're going to have the dialog text come up on layout 1. But if the words are not identical, they're not going to read each other. So make sure that if the D is capitalized in the layout title, that it's capitalized here as well, etc. So I'm just going to click on enter. Next, I'm going to go up here where it says global no, and I'm going to change it to yes. And for parallax here, I'm going to change it to 0 by 0. Make sure that you're not pressing the O button, and instead you're actually pressing 0. So I'm going to click out of it, and then if you want to just double check, again, click on dialog and make sure your numbers are there. So it's 0 by 0, and then the global is yes. So that's great. So next thing I'm going to do is change the size of this layout to match the size of the first layout. So the first layout, I had changed the size to 1800 by 1200. So if I go back to the dialog tab and then click on the gray space, you can see the size is different. So I'm going to change this to 1800 by 1200. And then I'm going to make this transparent. Okay, so again, if you don't see the transparent one come up, just click here where it says dialog. So for appearance, we're going to click on transparent. Okay, so you can see it became transparent. And now we're going to insert text. So just double click anywhere, scroll down to text. And you can make this any size you want. So I'm going to change it to 24 size font. I'm going to have it be centered. And don't forget to adjust your text box to give it enough space. You can also change the color. Down here, you can make it bold, italicized, etc. So I'm just going to leave it as is. With the text selected, I am going to scroll up here to add a behavior. And I'm going to add the fade behavior. So just double click on that. And in the fade behavior, I'm going to change the fade in time to 0.5, the wait time to 3, and then the fade out time to 0.5. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to layout 1, which is where my game is, and I'm going to add the layer dialog. So I'm going to come down here to my layers, and in the white space, I'm going to right click and click on add layer at top. And I'm going to type in the same word as layout 2. So it'll be dialog, enter, and then you'll see that the text popped up right here. Okay, so next I'm going to just lock the dialog so that doesn't move around. And I'm also going to rename that text. Okay, so you can just right click on it. Oh, because I locked it. Okay, so let's just unlock it so I can rename it. So clicking back on this, you can right click or just double click on it. And I'm going to name it dialog text. Okay, and then you can lock it if you want to. So I'm going to click on the first dialog trigger. I'm going to add an instance variable, another one. So this one is going to be called wait time. It's going to be a number, and the initial value is going to be 3. So now we're going to go to our event sheet. And we're going to choose player on collision with another object. And we want the player to collide with the dialog trigger. And when the player collides with the dialog trigger, we want the system to create an object. And that object is going to be the dialog text. So for the layer, instead of 0, you're going to write out layer. And then if you see layer index right here, just double click on that. So make sure that there's no space between those two words. And then you're going to do open parentheses. I'm going to write out the word dialog, so open parentheses and then quotation marks, dialog, so the same word as your layout, and then quotation marks again, and then close parentheses. So now your X is going to be 960 and Y is going to be 300, and this is just where the text box is going to appear. So you can change this based on your own game. So we're going to click on done, and we're going to add a few more actions here. So for the second action, we're going to click dialog text, click on set text, And we're going to delete these quotation marks and type in dialog trigger. And if it pops up, just go ahead and double click on it so it's less typing. And then period, and then dialog text. So just double click on that as well. All right, and then done. And then for the third action, we are going to click on dialog text. We're going to click set wait time under fade. And then we're going to delete the 0 and write dialog trigger. So again, just double click on this one. And then period, and then wait time, which should also pop up. And then double click on that. So done. And then fourth action, we're going to select dialog text and click destroy. And then we're going to drag and drop this until you see that black line right above system. So we're going to have that become our first action. And then for the fifth action, we are going to select the dialog trigger and select destroy. All right, so now let's preview this. Okay, so she walks through the first one and the text comes up, disappears after 3 seconds. She walks into the second one, the text comes up, but uh-oh, Big Bird is a solid, so she can't get to this one. All right, so let's go back and fix that. Okay, so we're going to add an event here. We're going to do player on collision with another object. So we want her to collide with Big Bird. And when she collides with Big Bird, I want the system to wait for 3 seconds. So I'll type in 3. And then I want Big Bird destroyed. Okay, so now let's preview this. Okay, so the text came up. Second text came up. And the third one came up. Great. So you can use this in one of your levels or have it as part of the story before your levels start. You can do a lot with this. So you probably noticed those green boxes were not transparent. So let's go back and fix that. So under layout, we can just click on these boxes and make it 0. Instead of 50 for opacity, and then they disappear. Oops. And then for text here, you can also delete that so it doesn't say anything. So now if we go back to layout 1, you shouldn't see anything written there and you shouldn't see the green boxes, but everything is still there. You can see it in your project panel. So if you click on the preview button, you can see she's walking. The text comes up. The second text comes up. Big Bird and the text will disappear. and then the last one will come up. There you go.